Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Page Turner Journal podcast. I'm your host, Joey Hungerford, and today I have the honor of interviewing Marcia and Roger Lamb. I just finished reading their book this week, This Doesn't Feel Like Love Either, and we get to chat about it today. I'm really honored to have read this book. I've known Roger a little bit before from our time working together on Disciples Today. Also reading about some of the history of our movement and the International Churches of Christ and watching him in Kingdom News Network videos. But I'm so thankful to have read this book because Roger and Marcia share in such a personal way. But Roger and Marcia, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing this morning?
Doing very well. Good to see you.
Great. Good to see you, Joey. Thanks so much for doing this.
Absolutely. And I've gotten to know you more through the book, but some of our listeners may not have read the book or know about you and your ministry. Could you briefly share your guys' testimony so our audience could be more familiar with you?
Marcia and I were really blessed to grow up with very loving parents who loved us, loved God. They were in the mainline churches of Christ. We got a great Bible education that way. Marcia and I actually met on my 18th birthday before classes started our freshman year at Harding College. And then we were married right before our senior year. And I actually started my first preaching gig as a junior in college. And then we went into youth ministry after that, and leading churches after that, etc. So we've had 53 years of ministry. Wow. All over the U.S., and I've gotten to share, preach, and film in 40 different nations, wow, telling the story of our churches. We're very blessed to be a part of the founding of the ICOC. Marcia likes to say we were in the prehistoric movement. But we've had incredible mountaintops and seen some amazing victories God gave, and we've had incredibly deep valleys in our life as we've struggled with a lot of health issues. We had to bury two of our children, adult children, and our third child is still dealing with a lot of health issues. But God has brought us through it all. Sometimes it doesn't feel like love, and that's why we wrote the books. We're not the only people to have suffered, but it put us much more in touch with people's suffering. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to try to share. God is the one who's held us together, taken us higher. Without God, our whole family would have been destroyed, and just a whole different story.
I think I learned more about God and learned more about family in every single chapter. I appreciate how you glue both of them together, and it was such a personal read. I was just on a date with my wife last night, and I was telling her about the book and what we're going to talk about today, and she was brought to tears just thinking about it. We have three little ones, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and we've only been in ministry for less than 10 years, so we have much to learn. I think I learned about both ministry and family from what you guys shared in the book. So thank you again for writing it. What was the moment you realized in all that ministry that your life circumstances and losses didn't feel like love?
Things were going pretty well from several years. And as a matter of fact, they were doing really great. We had a lot of campus students coming. There was a lot of growth and change, and we personally made some real changes to our lives and hearts, understanding a little bit about God. But when our son Michael was 6, it touched me that you have a 6-year-old, because that's a special age for us. Our lives really changed at that point, because it was just seemed out of the blue. He was struck with leukemia.
Yeah.
And at that time, there were very, very few people being cured or in the treatments. And the treatments lasted 3 years,
Wow.
which is incredible. And the chemo lasted 3 years. And it was long, about 2 3/4 or 2.5 years into that I felt like, oh, here we've been in the ministry, we've given our lives to you, God, and this just doesn't feel like love. And at that point I was really shaken, and yet it drove me to want to understand how God could say that he loved us, and so many passages about his love. It drove me to figure out what he meant and why. So that was the big turning point.
Yeah, that was a really crucial moment for us. The church was incredibly supportive and helpful to us. We learned a lot there about how to help people in their suffering. But at that point, Michael's best friend was our next door neighbor's kid. He had died of leukemia 9 months before.
Oh, wow.
So it was like a death sentence. Then we found out there was only a 15% chance of survival rate at that time. Now there's an 85% chance. So
wow.
Research and all that has really made a difference. Yeah. But so it was brutal, and then forcing the kid to take chemo it's just gonna make him sick and change his body. It just, it's pretty traumatic. But the heroes are the faith warriors, the servants, and the nurses and doctors at those hospitals. They were seeing so many kids die, and you would never know it. Their attitude, their serving, and it was amazing. So this really raised a lot of issues we had to deal with spiritually, in our own lives. And then it continued. Michael was healed, 5 years in remissions, considered healed. And a year after Michael was pronounced healed, Marcia had cancer and had to have an emergency hysterectomy, 2 kinds of uterine cancer.
Oh, wow.
They didn't tell us at the time. She had radiation. They didn't tell us at the time, but later a doctor in Boston said, you realize that cancer has a 5% survival rate.
Wow.
So that really made us grateful that
God was working. God was working, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it really came out of a lot of our own wrestling with these questions and finding the answers and the help.
I was 40, by the way, when that happened. So, for a woman at 40, a lot's going on.
Yeah.
Plus her children were school, middle school and grade school.
Yeah.
And the thought of me leaving Roger with 3 little kids to raise, it was kind of, it was weird, because I think God gave me a peace so I didn't dwell on the bad news. I think, again, the peace that passes understanding so many times were in our lives. There's no way to explain it. It was God's peace, the Holy Spirit. So,
thank you for sharing. I didn't know about those survival rates and statistics, and thank goodness for the healing. I can't imagine going through that. I haven't experienced cancer in my own family. But as you shared, Marcia, just thinking about a 6-year-old, thinking about our loved ones and those connections, my heart goes out, and though I haven't been through that exact circumstance, I grieve with you as I hear about that and read through the book. Of course, you wrote about that in the first book. I picked up in reading the sequel, This Doesn't Feel Like Love Either. And then what prompted you to write the sequel?
Well, as you pointed out, it was Michael and Marcia, and we were feeling really good, grateful, rejoicing. That was the mountaintop. She was pronounced cured. Wow, that was amazing. And then life keeps happening, and then the next phase, our daughter Christy is our oldest, David, our youngest, both went through spiritual and physical trials. They both left God, and then later came back to God. But then in physically 2014, David was on a tour. He was a touring musician, and he and his wife were the band, and they were playing the big festivals around the country, Newport Folk Festival, Stagecoach, etc. They're scheduled for Red Rocks, and he came down ill and had to go in the hospital on tour and was diagnosed with leukemia, a different kind than Michael had. And he died a year later. And this was a incredibly deep blow. And then 4 years later, Christy died suddenly, just out of the blue. She had had health issues her whole life and had gotten more and more disabled. We were caring for her, but it just, one day she got up and just died. And so we were like, wow, this does not feel like love either.
Picking up in the sequel, I loved that a chapter was written by Christy on being restored to the church, and you did such a good job of honoring her life, where I said, wow, this is an amazing sister to her brothers. I was so thankful just that she's a part of your family as I read about her. And in picking up in the sequel, I think I was confused on David and Michael separately getting two different types of leukemia. So I'm thankful for that clarity. And I'm thankful for this interview, that people can know the general story before getting into the book, and then making sure they can follow along with your family. Every chapter, more than just sharing about your family and what you're going through, you share about how you reconcile your faith with God, still see God's love, even with all the immense suffering that your family endured. How did you go through reconciling that?
Steps at a time.
Yeah.
It was interesting, the timing. I had been reading a book on Abraham before even Michael got sick. And I was so moved by how God called Abraham step by step in his faith, first to move, and then bigger steps and bigger steps. And, he didn't go from just following God's commands to suddenly having a baby, and then suddenly having to crucify that child. Right. It didn't happen like that. God kept giving him reasons to have faith. And I found that to be true in our lives, that there were steps along the way that God increased our faith for each thing that we were facing. And that gave me so much hope and encouragement. And I know there were several times we thought, that's it, I've reached the limit, time out. But it is true that God did bring us along. Also, just like Romans 5:3-5 talks about how we glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, character, hope, and hope does not put us to shame, because God's love is poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who's been given to us. That just is so true. I mean, we begin to see the things of challenges. And I also want to mention here that people, I'm just going to talk about this later. So I'll try to stay with the plan here. I do encourage people, if they are able to get a hold of the first book, This Doesn't Feel Like Love, because it does give a total background to our foundation, our growth, our steps of faith, and also, like you said, the difference between David and Michael and their challenges. The other thing I feel is so helpful in the first book, This Doesn't Feel Like Love, is that I learned through, again, I'm kind of a detective. If there's something in the Bible that doesn't seem right to me, or somebody says something, I go after, I try to figure out what the truth is. How did Jesus handle pain and suffering, that sort of thing. But I discovered that the Beatitudes, when Jesus went up to the mountain and preached the Beatitudes, he had a whole crowd there. He could have healed lots of people. He could have done a lot of things. But instead, he went up and talked about the soul, the person, the spirit. And I found in going through that it also was a way of dealing with the challenges of life. First, blessed are the poor in spirit. You have to approach these things basically, like when Michael got leukemia, it was like, I don't know what to do. I can't kiss this boo-boo, but it's just like, and so you surrender. You must surrender. And then each step goes along and go through, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. You have to mourn what's going on. You have to not just ignore it, not act like everything's going to be okay. Anyway, just that whole study in the middle of the first book, I think, is very helpful. Was to me. I think it would be to a lot of people. To read that.
Yeah. Marcia wrote most of the first book. And they said, well, men won't read books with just women's names on them. So we want you to write a couple chapters. So I want to give her credit for that.
Thank you.
And you can tell in the second book we shared and involved Michael. But she did a brilliant job of using the Beatitudes, as she said, to process all of that. And it's a great study in that. About reconciling our loving God with the suffering, I'll never forget sitting in that doctor's lounge. They had brought in the doctors, the nurses, it seemed like 20 people to give us the diagnosis. And we knew something was up. And then they left us there, and we were just stunned, knowing the neighbor's son, all I could see was his casket. And I just, the thought popped in my mind of James 1, rejoice in your suffering. And I've never felt more clueless in my whole life. It's like, that just does not make any sense to me at all. But I know God said it. There's something there. I'm going to find out what that means. And then I went on a search for what does that mean? How does that work? And the second thing that occurred to me, and then that following days, there's tendency, who can I blame for this? And and that's where we all go, right? And then the tendency when we suffer is to blame God. Why things are going so well, we're serving you, we're pouring our lives out intensely, and yet you allowed this to happen. But the thought came clearly to me, why get mad at the only person who can help me? But that doesn't make sense. God's the only one that can really help me through this, help us through this. He's not the guy to get mad at. I got to get mad at somebody, and I went to search for that and realized Jesus got mad at the devil when Lazarus died.
Yeah.
Right.
They watered it down in the translations. But you look at the original words, he was so shaken with anger, he was visibly disturbed. And he wasn't mad at the people, he was mad at the devil and at death. So there's a place for our anger to go. And that took me a long time to figure that out. But that's, God was angry at the devil.
Yeah.
Jesus' death. And that's there's a place for our anger to go. That was really helpful.
Yeah.
Another thing that really helped was 1 Corinthians 10:13. God will not allow us to be tempted beyond what we're able to bear. I was like, oh, come on. Are you serious? Are you serious? And this is where the stages come in. Each stage I was like, wait a minute, you got the wrong person. What is this? And it just kept going and kept going. And I have to confess, I have prayed for God to have less confidence in me. Nope. And then it just becomes a trust. At the end of that scripture, it says, he will provide a way out. It doesn't matter what pressure is on us, there is a righteous way out. There's an unrighteous way out. There's unrighteous ways, they aren't really ways out. And for the first time, I really understood why people go to what David died. I really understood why people go to superficial things to numb their pain.
Yeah.
They act out, they do weird things, or they do drugs or alcohol or whatever to numb the pain, because the pain is so deep and profound. And but that does nothing to really heal the pain. And it's still there. Only God can heal the pain.
Wow, thank you for sharing the scriptures that you wrestled with and reconciled and made true that didn't make sense at first. The Romans 5 and 1 Corinthians 10 and James 1. It sounds to me like until we actually go through those things, we don't really make sense of those scriptures. They don't seem true to us when we hear them. Thank you for sharing about Jesus too and what he did with his anger towards death and towards Satan. That's helpful for me in how you guys worked through that. And you continued learning then between the first book and the second. And I'm excited to go back and read the first book because, Marcia, your writing was fantastic in this book. I think I loved the creative approaches in each chapter, from touching on poetry, touching on some of the lyrics that your son had written. I saw a lot of creativity in there, and I'm looking forward to the first book. But what did you learn in the second half of your journey that you didn't know when you wrote the first book?
I think the first thing that hit us was, of course, when our kids rebelled, when they left God and left our fellowship churches, and it hurt so much that because you, as a parent, you put so much of you hope your best out there for your children, and when they choose not to follow, it hurts, and you can't understand it, and yet they need to be able to be their own person. They that's what they're going through, and the tension that we feel a lot of times is them developing that. But when they leave spiritually, it hurts because they're leaving God in a relationship with God, relationship with other people, and the good things, that you wish for them to have in their life. They're turning away from the best good things you could have.
Yeah.
So I think in doing that, it also helped us to grow in our unconditional love, because they're not very lovable at that point. I know even Michael left the Lord for a while, the church, and yet, and I remember thinking, you are not much fun to be around, without God.
Yeah.
You are not a very nice person. Unfortunately, he made the decision to come back, and basically he let us know he was rebelling while he was at home. And would you rather I rebel when I'm out there? Well, the other two did, but anyway, but it really, I think it hurts a lot, because a lot of parents do put their whole heart in it. And it did help us to ask ourselves questions. Is our child more than just them coming to church? Is there more to our being pleased with them?
Yeah.
Or, who are they, basically? But also the unconditional love that God gives us. It's, I think Roger realized and shared that every one of God's children have left him at some point in our lives, at some point in their lives. And so, I mean, in many ways, we need to get lost in order to get found. But it is so painful, so painful. And I think there's more compassion people have for those of us who are children left God now than maybe there were in the old days.
Yeah.
That was, a lot of judgmental statements and such. But now everybody's going through it. To be honest, we're about the same ages, and it's difficult. The most important thing is just to love them like God, and love unconditionally. Stretch your borders. Think about how God would love them. And the other thing I found encouraging was there's some, especially in the Old Testament, some scriptures that talked about how, I think it's in Isaiah, how children were taken away in captivity. And then the scripture goes on to say, and they were brought back on the shoulders of the kings. And it occurred to me that the very things that took our kids away, be it drugs or anger or an emotional reaction or trouble with relationships or whatever, are those very things that'll bring them back, because you get to that point where you feel so low, you begin to need God. And so you don't want it to happen. We're not happy it happens, but many times those are the very things that will carry them back on their shoulders. So that gave me hope. And again, stretching my love.
It's an awesome passage.
We, you learn that every opportunity is everything happens opportunity for learning. And one of the things we learned was that the parable of the sower applies to your kids. We don't want to think that. We want to think they're all just going to be fine and they're all going to have the good hearts and respond. But they're people, and they all have to make their own choices. And you've got to love them just like you love everybody else. Share your faith with them. Only even more. The other thing is, it's a great opportunity for self-reflection. And what I've discovered was I had grown distant emotionally from David. I'd been trying to be the good father and do all the right things, set him up, do all this. But I just lost the connection with him. And I did not really study who he was and connect with him, who he was. I was more who I thought he was and wanted him to be. And so there was a real gap in our relationship for a long time. And as God worked it out, years later, all of our kids moved back to New England. Christy had been restored in Chicago with us. She moved back. David had moved back here right out of high school because of his friends in the music scene. Michael got hired by the Boston Church as a youth minister. And so we're like, we can work from anywhere. We're going to move back to be around the kids. And God just really blessed us with that. We were burying our own parents about that time. And we got to spend the very precious years there with all of us together. We connected with David on a real profound level. So grateful for that before he passed. And one of the best things that happened to me after he passed, one of the guys that he was closest to sent me an email and said, I just want you to know, David restored my faith in Jesus.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah. So I think it's not all about them, it's about us too. You know, we gotta be willing to, what is God trying to teach me here through this? And not give up my faith. If I gave up my faith, what am I offering to them? I see parents give up their faith in God and their kids disappointed. Now you cut off all hope for them. And they know it. They're watching. You know, they see how we're going to handle disappointment and hurt. And then again, it dawned on me, every one of God's kids has hurt him and rejected him at some point. I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm sitting here feeling sorry for myself. If God can do that and still send his only son to die for all the rest of his children, that's a high calling. And I can do this for my little space. So if he can do that, he showed me how.
Amen. Yeah, thank you for your humility in still studying your children, learning about them and learning about yourselves and where you could have done better in different areas. There's a lot of value and a lot to learn even from reading the book on how we can help our kingdom kids. It calls me higher as a father too, and I'm so glad Christy had the chapter in there as well about being restored to the church. I loved reading that.
Yeah, she asked for that to be published. So that was amazing. After she was restored, she went after friends of hers who left God and restored several of them.
Well, tell me, there's the subheading of the book, Don't Waste Your Suffering. Tell me about that concept and where did the phrase come from for you guys?
Thank you. That's a great question. Gloria Baird used to say this all the time in her counseling and advice. And the Bairds discipled us for so much and owe them so much. They were there for us in every one of our deep spots and celebrating on the mountains too. But so she used to say that, and I shared that with David Morgan Eve, his wife. And David, being the poet, changed that to waste not your suffering. And so he was going to get a tattoo of that when he got better. and never was able to do it. But Morgan Eve now has a tattoo of Waste Not Your Suffering. So I just thought and she wrote a song her new band performs, Waste Not Your Suffering. And so it just synthesizes so much. Michael, in 2022, the book came out in August at the Orlando conference, where all these people were such a great moment. Although we were stuck in a hotel room.
No.
I got to go to one thing.
We saw it.
We watched it from the window. But it was great having that, being able to process all that, having all these. We thought we could breathe now. 1 month later, Michael's diagnosed with lymphoma. It was like another gut punch. And his first diagnosis was a year or two to live. And it was like, what? The roller coaster ride that I put to in the book. And it's like, oh no, another deep dive, horrible curve here. And fortunately, as God worked, a friend of ours who was also undergoing cancer treatment, a real hero of the faith here in Boston, helped get Michael into the cancer center at Mass General Hospital. It's like top of the world. People from these sheiks from Saudi Arabia fly their families there, all this stuff. And they were, as God would have it, the very next month they were starting a clinical trial on a treatment for Michael's exact kind of rare lymphoma.
Wow.
Yeah. So he got in there, and within 6 months he was clear. And was, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Then last summer, it came back. Because this cancer is not curable yet, it's treatable. And then he went through this amazing, cutting-edge sci-fi kind of treatment.
Difficult.
Where they take your immune system cells out of your blood, genetically modify them to attack the specific cancer you have, and put them back in your body. And then in 3 months, he was clear again.
Wow.
And so they think another year or two, he'll be clear, and they already have another treatment ready for the next time if it comes back. So the roller coaster continues. But Michael has shared something. He has a chapter in the second book, where he talks about going from middle child to only child. And by the way, he told us he didn't want us to write it. I told him the next book's going to be This Feels Like Love.
Amen.
But he says something when he shares about this that resonates with me. He said, suffering will destroy, define, or develop us. We have to choose. Everybody suffers. We're not the only people who suffer. There's some people suffer way more than this. But that's exactly, we found that to be true. You've got to choose. Is this going to destroy me? Am I just going to focus on it and let it destroy me, and let it define me? That's all I think about, all I do? Or is it going to develop me? Well, with God, it can develop. And he and Kristen are an incredible example. They continue to lead our Next Gen ministry for the whole Boston church. and through all the
Mm.
treatments, all the stuff. And the church has been great with him, giving him space when he needs space for treatments and
Oh, wow.
whatnot. But they, yeah, they're just doing a phenomenal job there. So we've learned from our son also. I think he learned a lot of lessons from that first experience, actually, and that he's just kept applying through his whole life.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. The church helped to bear his burdens, to bear your guys' burdens. I know my wife has gone through the grief recovery method. Their world headquarters were in Bend, Oregon, where we helped plant a church, and I learned a lot going through that myself, but I still felt like it was just the tip of the iceberg in how to even help others process their grief, even preparing for this interview. I don't want to say the wrong thing to and many of us feel this way as we want to encourage those who are suffering. We don't want to say the wrong thing. Your book is very valuable and can help others. You go in depth on Job and his friends, helping to counsel him, and you talk about other people who said helpful things to you or maybe not helpful things. But for people who fear saying the wrong thing when someone is grieving, based on your experience, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone who wants to support someone through a crisis?
I think most important is be there or be present if you can. And if you're a close enough friend, I think the feeling is everybody should go see them and bring a casserole.
Yeah.
But it's it can get overwhelming. I just a little hint. We found that giving gift cards to restaurants is a little more helpful sometimes.
Yes.
People can just pick up and eat, go as they need. But being present, we saw this when David was in the ICU. It was his last week or more. And he had friends come to the hospital. It was just incredible. People that were other bands, school friends, but friends that came, they actually slept on the floor to be there. There was a waiting room that pretty much everybody, they took over, we took over.
Yeah, dozens, 40, yeah, wow.
Yeah, and they all didn't, demand the time of Morgan Eve or being in there with David, but they were together. And I think that was another part, because it helped them sort through the grief. They were a motley crew, tattooed, long hair, strange clothes. And some people started going into the waiting room for their use, and they'd walk in and then they'd walk back out because they just weren't sure about this group. But they brought coffee, big coffee urns. They brought food to us and to the whole group. And so that showed me, that was incredible. And we had Christian, friends from church that came to be with us. And I think most important is, be grief, but I think people also like to talk about the person they're grieving. There were very, very few people that literally asked me about what David's illness was like. What was it? How was his last days? Or if you want to talk about it, they do that. If you want to talk about it, I'd love to listen what you went through. And that helped so much. Not everybody did it, but close friends did. And and also just talking about the child. They may not be here presently, but they are still present in your heart and in the spirit. So don't be afraid to talk about and bring up the name. Yeah, they may cry. I've cried a few times. It probably overwhelmed a few people, but then, that's what's needed at the moment. Christy's friends were great. They came over when we were preparing the memorial, and it was awesome. They prepared the posters. One of our other friends took care of the food, and I think that memorial was helpful. I mean, we had plenty to do, but they contributed. They had each other. They're our daughters. Yeah,
wow.
We've adopted all of them. So, I think if I also may mention, I'll do that.
Yeah.
That also some people, I think this is where it goes off the rails, is that I'll just give you an incident. Yeah. One of my cousins had just lost her husband within the past month. I brought her to the church service in another town where Roger was speaking, and introduced her to some people. And I mentioned that her husband had passed, and the person that we were talking to, took it up from there and talked all about herself, and all about something that was hard for her, which actually happened to be something like getting looked over in a promotion, or something that seemed nothing related to a death, and so from that experience, I thought of this phrase: share, don't compare.
Yeah.
And there's two reasons for that. One is, sometimes people hear our story and they're overwhelmed. And I think it's important not to compare. I mean, I don't want them to compare to our grief and our experience, because what they're going through is the worst thing they've ever gone through. It's like, sure, you grieve because that's what you're going through. That's the worst thing that you've ever had happen to you. So I appreciate that. You can share, but not compare, not feel bad about what you're experiencing.
Right.
I guess
it's not really competition.
Yeah. Well, I've learned to bite my tongue and saying, I relate, because of something that may not even be related. Exactly. Thank you for sharing. I acknowledge that. Wow. I can't imagine. I have not been through that. But here, here's something separate and totally different that may be helpful. But wow, good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, and sometimes people are trying to help.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're just hijacking the conversation or one-upping. That's no. And I've had to learn a lot about be quick to listen, empathize, validate, and then share.
Yeah.
Because that makes a huge difference. Along those lines, again, our poet son, David, took the concept, and in one of his songs, Danger and Dread, the lyrics are, we all have our crosses to bear. No need to contrast and compare. You can always find someone with a bigger stack of splinters somewhere. And, I did so many funerals before I ever had someone close die. And I hate to think what I said or was of any help in that time period. But that's all I knew at the time. And there again, you can't experience what you haven't experienced.
Yeah.
You got to give people grace sometimes.
I think those are his lyrics that stood out the most to me. Someone has that stack of splinters. It's even bigger somewhere. I noted that down. I highlighted it. Um, and I'm glad you included so many of the lyrics in the book from him. And I'm delighted to hear how the memorial gathering was so meaningful for Christy, how you adopted some of her friends as your daughters, and sounds like Christy rubbed off on them. You talk about her being so good at events and taking care in the small details, making things amazing.
Yes.
And so she wrote this chapter in the book, and I think there's a lot of value in when we have kids who learning from that chapter, learning from what you guys wrote on when a child leaves the faith, or perhaps doesn't embrace their faith yet, there's a silent grief there that we often overlook. I know in my own church we have
Mhm.
parents, we just have a lot of kingdom kids and a lot that maybe haven't made the decision yet to follow the Lord. What advice would you guys give parents who are currently experiencing a silent grief like that?
Yeah, that's a good description.
Hmm.
A silent grief. Um, I think also finding each other,
Hmm.
being able to have someone to talk to about it, um, is helpful. But as long as it's not like downward
Yeah.
spiraling discussions, but uh, it helps to have someone that you can talk to, because for so long, so many things we feel sometimes as a Christian that's taboo
Yeah.
territory to talk about, or you don't want to know that about yourself. And yet God, the whole gospel's about exposing it to the
Hmm.
light. That's part of where the healing is. So um, we, there's so many things that
Hmm.
comes to mind, and yet I'm 80 years old and my mind is going, ooh, it's going. Do you have something to
Yeah,
say?
That's
yeah.
helpful. Yeah.
Such,
Yeah.
yeah, that's very helpful. This is such a profound area.
Hmm.
Um, I think as Marcia was sharing, having someone or a few people who can help you process it and not judge you, but will help you process it, but will help build your
Hmm.
faith, not deconstruct or destroy your faith.
Hmm.
You can share it with people who will use it as a chance to destroy your faith.
Hmm.
And that's not helpful to anybody. They may be speaking out of their own pain or whatever.
Hmm.
But that time you need a builder not a destroyer.
Hmm.
And find those. They're all over. Find those people
Hmm.
that you can confide in and will help you. Uh,
Hmm.
the other thing I think is super important, we used to talk about more than we do, is help your kids develop great spiritual
Hmm.
relationships. Put them in situations where they can develop spiritual relationships. Because as they are leaving home, God's naturally having them detached from the parents and attached to their
Yeah.
friends and the people around them. Well, you can help them by just helping them with time, helping with driving, helping them with setting it up, sending them to Hope Youth Corps, helping them go to campus ministries that are
Yeah.
strong, where there are kids that are strong there and not islands. Not many freshmen are ready to be a missionary.
Yep.
Just helping them. This played out in two of our kids, all three. Michael was in a great, thriving situation. Christy was in great campus ministries and converted some of these women who were devoted to her the 12 years she was gone.
Yeah.
Wow.
They stayed by
They
her.
stayed by her side.
encouraging, but true friendships. They really were.
And that really helped her back. In fact, two of them, just a year ago, they were going to the three were planning to go to Fiji for a vacation together when they turned 40. 50. Yeah. 50. Well, Christy passed, but they asked for a portion of her ashes. But they took them there, the other two, and distributed her ashes in her memory. But she had converted both those people.
Oh, wow.
One from Japan, from Connecticut. On the other side, David, every one of his close friends in the church left God during his high school years. And he just had a very different experience. And then he did not get connected in his years after high school. And it showed. It showed. And the contrast is just amazing.
Yeah.
So I really encourage parents to think about that and sacrifice for that. When we were here in Boston, we had very few teens originally. We drove our kids all over the city to be with other teen Christians. And we even moved to there and asked some other teen families to move there so they could go to high school together.
Yeah.
And stuff. So it's just such a crucial time of life.
The anchor of the church in Eugene here was originally three families came together because they had young children, and all right, with three families we can have enough kingdom kids to come together, and some of them fell away and were restored, and some of them didn't become a disciple until way into college, but because of those 12-15 year relationships, they were pulled through it because of the love of family, confiding in them, building with them. I like that term you used, how we need to build with them and build those relationships. I know that's important for me because I've been in a different church from some people in my family, and I can not only rebel against God, but kind of rebel against family, and it causes a lot of friction there. So we do need to build in little steps. Thank you for sharing about that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Well, because there's hope in a story like that. For others who are listening to this podcast interview and hearing from you two, what do you hope is the single biggest takeaway for others who might be experiencing their own roller coaster in life right now?
I think the biggest thing is don't give up. Just look for God in the details. Look, because he's there, he's working. Being in tune to the Spirit, speaking to you through the Word, and just through your heart that's consistent with God's Word. Just so much that you can see how God is working. And as you said, working out the details like you did with finding the right doctors and getting the right medications. There's so many details we didn't put in the book that God obviously had worked out. I think celebrate the small miracles. Let that be a celebration with your child. If it's a child that's going through it or anything. I mean, anything, because kids, not every kid's going to go through this, but they're going to have their own challenges, their own trials. They need to learn how to handle hardship and disappointment. And they can learn the lessons that God is teaching, and stories in the Bible. We use a lot of Bible stories when Michael was going through his treatments. One in particular I share about in the book is about blanking out here. Yes, about David and Goliath, and how David ran to Goliath, and he didn't back down. Michael he loved those stories about the courage and facing what was going on with him as a battle, the good cells and bad cells, and God's army and the devil's army. So, of course, that's what you would do with the child. As the child gets older, I do believe God speaks to each of us in a language that we hear and understand. For example, I think David, music spoke to him, music, lyrics, stories, and he was an artist, and so he did love the Psalms. We were blessed that when he passed away, that his wife Morgan Eve sent David's Bible to us. I think he might have requested it, but by reading David's Bible, we saw his notes, we saw what he underlined, we saw his heart in a way that we might not have understood it. And that was such a precious gift to us to start to see what was going on between him and God that we didn't have a clue. So they're just, again, I believe that just the way we were met or the way we were reached in our hearts to find God is not necessarily our child's. Take me to the woods, let me look at birds. That's the way God speaks to me.
Yeah.
Nature is a big one. So anyway, I'm just saying, study your child. Don't give up. God loves them more than you do.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the roller coaster, we all have our own roller coaster. And again, shared up to pair. But we're going to have twists and turns, steep climbs, great views, sun drops. It's just what life is like. What really helped me is to understand that what helps some people just freak out a little bit. Sometimes we just freak out at life when it's changed. If things happen. But I think accepting the fact that life is a roller coaster, it's not a smooth train ride. And then thinking, okay, what helps some people be able to raise their hands on the roller coaster, and other people just pass out or yell and hold on for their life. And the way I process it was, well, okay, this roller coaster, these people that have the roller coaster have more invested than I do in this. It's to their benefit that this thing work and that this car stay on the track. Well, in our life, God is the one that built the roller coaster. He's the one that allows the curves and stuff. He is going to be sure this car stays on the track. And if I trust him and I look with him on that, if I jump out, I'm definitely doomed. But if I trust him, then I know it's going to work. And so even on the deep dives, I can raise my hands and celebrate and not just freak out on these kind of things. So that takes some processing sometimes to get there, but you can actually help yourself get there. The other thing that I would advise is that we all have cracks in our life. We have cracks in our relationships. Go to God to help you get those cracks filled and healed. Our marriage was just really not going to make it before we made our disciple decision. We made our decision to be disciples. That's what saved our marriage. And so many people, that's true. There are a lot of marriages in this world that would not still be around if people had decided to be disciples.
Yeah.
And then life comes and causes pressure on you. When we were taking Michael to these doctor's offices to get treatments and checkups. We would make friends with these other families who were there because they were all in the doing the same thing. And then we would notice that one of the people in the couple would stop coming.
Yeah.
And you'd separate and get divorced a lot. We were asking the medical people about it. They said, yes, they saw this way too often. That the pressure, the marriages would crack, break. And it got me thinking, that we all have the cracks in our lives. And if God is not healing those, filling those, pressure is going to come.
Yeah.
Anyway. And I've just got to work now to be sure God's healing the cracks in my heart, in my life, in my soul, in my relationships. Because when the pressure does come, then I'm going to understand the cracks. Do that. So if we do those things and trust the guy who holds the roller coaster together, we can raise our hands.
Amen. He holds the roller coaster together, and he's the potter making us those jars of clay. There are going to be the cracks, and there is going to be the pressure. And thank you so much for, again, writing the book, sharing about your own roller coaster ride. For anyone listening, I pray it encourages you, but that you also dig deeper over at ipibooks.com, either with the first or second book, This Doesn't Feel Like Love, and This Doesn't Feel Like Love Either, or any of the other grief resources at ipibooks.com. Roger and Marcia, is there anything else you would like to mention or end with?
It was something I wanted to share, but it is hard to have lost adult children. Well, there are so many days I wish they were here, many times. But one of the privileges I feel is that I got to watch their whole life develop, from the time of birth, first heartbeat till the end, and to see the development of their lives and their character, people they were and became, and that they reached their goal. And I trust God with their soul.
Yes, and the great thing is, as Christians, is this isn't the end of the story. And we have no doubt that Christy is arranging our welcome party. It'll be one of the most organized things in Melbourne. And Dave will be playing music. But the one last thing I'd just like to share is going through things and you're grieving. And it doesn't mean you have to have had a loss. Grief comes in a lot of forms. Get somewhere to help you process it. And these books are, hopefully, they're written to help you process it. But many other resources, we have a list of them in the back of the book. And then there's so many programs that you can go through now. One of them years ago to help you do that. But go to God, go to others, and the healing is so little. So, thank you for doing this.
Yes.
IPI has a ton more resources also that are so helpful. Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
Roger and Marcia, thank you for blessing me and blessing anyone else who's hearing. And if you feel like this blessed you, dig deeper in the books, but also please share it with others. Leave us a comment and let us know what you're going through and how you appreciated the book as well. Thank you all for listening. God bless.